to order. I asked Mrs. Bryant to bring a letter that she read last meeting that was sent to her. She sits on the board of directors for the School Board Association. This came from another board of director from St. Johns County. And I just thought it would be a nice way to start this meeting. Mrs. Bryant?
Yes. Beth Slough is a personal friend of mine, and her husband is a missionary in India and Russia and other places. I'm not exactly sure where. So that'll give you the take on what I'm about to read. As our leaders begin to plan for what school will look like in the near future, pray for them. If a school starts normally, people will be angry. If the school starts with restrictions, people will be angry. If we wear masks, people will be angry. If we don't wear masks, people will be angry. If student sports are canceled, people will be angry. If students' sports are allowed to continue without spectators, people will be angry. If we have a staggered start time, continue distant learning, or a combination of both, people will be angry. Our leaders are in a lose-lose situation. The choices they make over the next few weeks and months are completely uncharted territory for them. They are doing the best they can with the things they're being told. Pray for them. Show them grace. Have empathy. Stay positive. Let's stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I need a motion to adopt the agenda as recommended by Superintendent Himmel.
Move approval.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Kennedy, a second by Mrs. Bryant to approve the adoption of the agenda as recommended by Superintendent Himmel. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Next item on the agenda is Superintendent Himmel, and we're going to do B on the calendar first, right? Good.
Good afternoon. Today's meeting, we called for an emergency board meeting because, as you all know, and I think most of the public knows and understands, that last Friday was our cutoff day for our full-time Citrus virtual school. And we extended it because, believe it or not, we were getting so many calls late Thursday night and all day Friday, we couldn't even answer all the calls, which is fine. So we cut the deadline off for Monday, and as of today, we are well over 2,600 students in the full-time virtual school. And those of you who have been in the schools, you know that is a major change in staffing, scheduling, class requirements, class offers, and everything else that we do to get our kids ready for the first day of school. So when we saw those numbers, and we knew that they would probably get larger and larger, but we wanted to give our parents as much time as possible before school started. That was scheduled for August the 10th. We wanted to make sure that we gave them plenty of ample time to make a choice for the safety and the health and the best decision that they could for their child and our students. So with that being said, I wanted to have an emergency meeting as soon as we could so that we could discuss the delay of the start date for school for our kids. So yesterday we worked on a plan that would, and I'll just, I'll just get into the plan and tell you what it is, and then we can talk about who, what, why later. You know that. The plan, looking at the calendar, because our teachers are on a 190-day workday plan, 196 contract for the year. So we looked at those days, we looked at the 180 days. The state is not, they will waive the 180 days for attendance for students, but they will not waiver on the seat time of the 900 hours. So with the delay of school starting, we wanted to make sure we had the days for those, the days for our teachers, support staff, everybody. So yesterday we came up with a plan for our calendar, which would have our teachers come to school on August 3rd and 4th, which is their regular start day. And the reason we're sticking with that as a recommendation is because, as you all know, we have changed our platform to Canvas. Canvas had already agreed to come work with our teachers and train them on August 3rd and 4th. So we're leaving that in for two training professional development days. Then we're recommending that the teachers would then be off on the 5th, 6th, and 7th, which is Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and the following Monday, which would be the 10th. All teachers will report back on the 11th. And our students, my recommendation would bring the students in on the 20th. Now, if you want to ask me why we're bringing them back on the 20th, which is a Thursday, Friday, many of our teachers have told us in the past they like starting in the middle of the week many times. So we thought if we started on Thursday, Friday time frame, we would have time to go over procedures, policies, code of conduct, everything that we go over with our kids for the first few days, getting our elementary schools acclimated back into school, and talking about processes as we move forward through COVID-19 on walkways, pathways through our schools. I have directed staff that we will be on call to work Saturday and Sunday for the, the 22nd, 23rd, because we know that there will be things in place that we need to fix. So we could get those changes made, anything that we need to revamp, remodel, change a pathway. They may call us from a school and say that pathway's not working. We'd have time to do that before the kids come back on Monday the 24th. So my recommendation to the board would be to allow us to change the calendar where the students would come in on the 20th. The teachers would work the 3rd and the 4th, and then back to pre-planning, which will now give them 8 days of pre-planning. Technically it gives them 10 days, but it gives them 8 consecutive days of pre-planning before the kids come to school, because we know with us changing platforms, we're still going to have extra time for them to put their classes together, to get where they feel comfortable with the training and do those types of things. So with that, I would like to hear back from the board. Any thoughts, comments, if you've heard from staff, which they didn't really know, but those are things that we've recommended, and we worked with Ed Services yesterday and some of our principals yesterday.
Superintendent, one of the questions that I think a lot of people is on their mind is how will this impact the payroll calendar? Because of course a lot of them get impacted by that. So what, if any, impact would this have?
We worked with payroll yesterday, and HR will have no impact on the paychecks because our teachers would have received a check anyway on the 15th, and our support staff, bus drivers, and the rest of our staff would have received a check on the 30th. So everybody will be back in place before that.
Do we know approximately how many then seat hours we would have if we started on the 20th? And I guess my real question is if we needed to build in some seat hours, do we have places elsewhere in the calendar that if something were to come up later, that we would be able to maybe build in some extra seat hours?
I will share with you, did you all get a copy of the proposed calendar? That calendar is for you all to review today, tomorrow, the next few days. My intent, did you all get one calendar or two?
No, I brought the approved one, and then I just had copies made for them. So we're making changes to the approved. We'll
get that for you, okay? If we can get Amy to print out the 2 calendars, because my intent is to share those with you. We will not make a decision on the final work days throughout the school year, but my intent is I would like to hear back from teachers and staff. I would like to send out the 2 calendars that we have proposed for them, because for instance, in January, where the teachers were coming back on, I'm making days up, I think the 6th, they would come back on that Monday on one of the calendars, because I hate to bring this up today, and Tito and I were on a call this morning, but if one of you aren't living right, and we have a hurricane that's coming through, we've got to make up days, at least we've got a couple days in there for make-up days if we have to.
That's
So that's what we've looked, we've got a couple half-days left in the calendar, because if we can increase those hours, then it increases. We are well over our 900 hours, and we want to make sure that happens. In fact, I think the days come out to be 179 days, but we're well over the 900 hours. Because I can't forget that we're still trying to get a 1.5 years education into 1 year, so we didn't want to lose any instruction hours.
So your plan is still going to be to finish the first semester before Christmas, then, is that right?
No, and that's why they need to bring that to you so they can see that. On the one calendar, the semester would end like the second week in January. If we end it before Christmas, then one semester has 79 student hours or student days, and one's got like 94 or something, and I'm just making, but it was, Doug, it wasn't close enough to say, unless the teachers come back to us and say that's the calendar they want, teachers and staff.
So, but with that, we're going to keep our Thanksgiving break and our Christmas break. I mean, when you figure that out going into January, that's with the assumption that we're going to continue with the full week.
There's one calendar that, did we get enough for all the board?
They're getting done.
Okay.
I had that one for you.
Okay, thank you. There's one calendar that doesn't disturb either vacation, and there's one calendar that does if they want to end earlier.
I share Doug's concern too, because we're gonna have some early graduates, possibly, only a few, but some of them are gonna wanna be off to college in January, and we've always tried to finish them before Christmas so that they would be synced with that college calendar.
We'll be very flexible with their schedule.
So we could accommodate them and maybe give them exams.
Yes, we'll be very
Well,
flexible.
it's not gonna be that many.
Because as we all know, this is not going to be a normal school year.
Yeah, no.
And it shouldn't be as many because when we went off block, we reduced that number. We had a lot more when we had a block schedule where they finished that with now a 7 period where they're going all year. There's only a few that usually fall into that.
But we'll be sensitive to all of that.
Okay. And then the other thing is, I don't know why, but historically, when we started in the middle of the week, we started on Wednesday instead of Thursdays. Why did you pick Thursday instead of Wednesday?
We picked Thursday because of the number of days and those types of things to make sure our teachers had enough pre-planning days.
Okay.
And I've got another question in regards to the Monday start, which would have been on the 24th, which would push it out 2 weeks. Extend summer vacation by 2 weeks for the kids, that is. But that had been discussed with me by staff. Is that, and now there's a change to the 20th. So is that just been kind of a recent decision, or the movement to the
We talked about the 17th to 24th, and then I came in one morning and said, why don't we start on the 20th? Only because of knowing that everything's a little bit different than ever before. Also, the first couple days, all know the bus routes are absolutely challenging. That's a very good word, challenging. So we thought that if we could get all that in place, Mr. Dodd, before Monday, then we at least have time over the weekend to do bus routes and those types of things. So that was another piece of it.
Madam Chair, point of order. If we can speak into the mics again, there's some people asking that, so we just need to make sure we speak up.
Is that when I turned my head to face you guys?
And Mr. Dodd, we're open to suggestions, okay? This is what we were bringing today for recommendation, and if you all need something different, we'll work on that too.
The 3rd and 4th, I'm assuming, is to provide some professional development and then come and reinforce that professional development, then coming back on the 11th. I believe that ends up adding 2 days of professional development. Is that correct?
Yes, because our teachers were scheduled for 5 days from the 10th or from the 3rd through the 7th for pre-planning, and now they'll be technically getting 10 days of pre-planning.
Oh, right. I'm sorry.
With the 2 days. Canvas had already scheduled the 3rd and the 4th with us, and we had already scheduled them to come in and do the training for our teachers, so that's what we were pretty well staying with that piece.
Canvas, for those who don't know, and that's okay, is our LMS, our learning management system. We would be using that both face-to-face instruction as well as we'd be using that if we had to go to either temporary distance learning or if we had a quarantine situation. classroom, is that correct?
That is correct.
And then, so would Canvas then, that training take place on the 3rd and 4th?
A lot of our teachers have gone online and already started some of their own training. So that training, yes, would go on the 3rd and 4th. It'll be split for half the teachers one day, half for another, and they'll be working back and forth with that. Some teachers I know, because we've got teachers that just will go home and play with it and practice it and probably have it down pat before they come back on the 11th. But we still allowed a couple extra days for them to go back in on the 11th to allow them to be able to work with it, set up their classes, and get everything ready for school.
Do we know if Canvas will then be available, like customer service or support after the training, so that if the teachers needed some questions, will, in their home, and as most teachers do, I know they're already this summer, I can tell you I get one right now at home that is saying, I need to get planning, I need to be doing this, I need my Canvas training. So she's done the 10 hours, so, will Canvas be able to support us, the organization, in that time?
Ms. Worthy has met with them and talked to them several times, and there'll be a 24/7 hour or 24/7 hotline for them to call to contact Canvas.
Excellent.
And so the calendar would bring the kids back until after Memorial Day, to the first week in June. And that's probably just for review and exams.
Well, and on the pre-approved calendar, teachers were coming back on the 1st and 2nd,
Yeah.
but this would gain some hours for our kids.
Okay. And that, just bringing back those 4 days would make up for the 7 that they're missing, or the 8 that they're missing.
I think we picked up 7 of the days that they were missing,
So,
but we picked up hours.
We tried this one time before after Memorial Day to keep these kids in the classroom, and they did come and take their exams, but they didn't come to reviews or anything like that.
And they don't do well on half days either.
And they don't do well on half days either.
Mr. Dodd?
yes, so on Plan A and Plan B, when is the end of the semester? It's still the 15th, is that right?
And I think at the, I think she had it on the 15th. I think it's January 15th. I'd have to
Yeah,
confirm that with
I
her.
see kind of a little outline around
Outline.
15 on January, but it isn't identified.
Oh, there, yeah, the little green line, the
Yeah.
little green box
Yeah,
behind
green
the
box, yeah.
So we're giving you the copy of these calendars today so that you can review them. You know that people will contact you all also about this, but my intent is on the 11th, I think it's the 11th, that when the teachers come back, we're gonna, and I'm gonna work with the union, and where we can send this out to the teachers, get their feedback and let them vote, and then we can come back and bring that to you all.
Do you just need consensus from us today, or do you need something more formal?
What I need from you all today is that if you would approve for us to move forward with the start date of the 20th for our students.
Can you just, real quick, though, come back with the 24th? What was the cons about starting on the 24th? What was the biggest issue there for you to recommend start on Thursday rather than Monday?
Several times we've started on Wednesday, and I heard from many teachers that they really liked, and I think Ms. Counts can verify that they really like starting a few days before the weekend, because that also, and I can't speak for every teacher, but I know that that gives them the weekend also to get to sometimes regroup or do things like that. So if they could get, because there's going to be a lot of changes for our kids on which way to go through a hallway, what they have to do, how they have to get to where they need to get to. So if they can review all that on that Thursday, Friday, on weekend, if we have to go in, redo bus routes, redo places for students to be, monitor how we're going to monitor where the kids are, and things like that. That would give us the weekend to take care of that and then come back on Monday and have it all ready to fix what we need to fix.
And are the teachers going to have to approve either Plan A or Plan B?
We're going to send it out and ask them to vote on one of them.
And then are we going to possibly put it on the website too, because we're going to have a lot of people, or maybe we should just tell them that Thanksgiving is still intact and Christmas is still intact and spring break is still intact?
If the teachers don't vote for Plan B, that would be true. If they vote for Plan B, that's not, they'll have it changed.
I don't know that we've asked this, and if we did, I apologize for repeating. Did the end date has not changed in your proposal, is that correct?
It has changed.
It has changed.
It has changed. It's gone from the 2nd, hang on,
Yeah, I'm just looking from the 2nd to the 4th.
Yes.
So it's changed by 2 days.
But it's changed for the students.
Students,
The
it's
students
by
by a
week.
couple days and then the teachers for a couple days.
On Plan B, though, it's not as many days, right? See, the last day for students is the 2nd, whereas our previously approved calendar, the last day for students is May the 28th.
Correct.
But on Plan A, the last day for students is on the 4th.
Correct. Same days for teachers. And both those last 2 days would be half days.
So if we pushed it back more, that's going to impact that as well.
And then on our sports calendar for fall sports, I mean, we're going to coordinate that around this calendar. I mean, I think it will have some changes there.
I know that Mr. Bishop's worked with athletic directors for several days or months. I do know that, or at least I heard from Superintendent Association, the Florida High School activities, which gave us no direction the other night for the superintendent's cases. I heard, and you may know this better than I do, that they may meet tomorrow, Friday, or Monday, but they're supposed to reconvene. So I don't know if they'll come out with a stronger recommendation or something, and then we could certainly have those discussions on Tuesday. I know that they're supposed to start on Monday, some of the practices, but we have moved that a week later until we see if we get any other recommendation from Florida High School.
Right, because football is supposed to start, fall football is supposed to start on the 27th of July, which is next Monday.
Correct.
So the FHSAA board, decided to allow local districts, just like all the other plans, to have local control of athletics. And because the state is so diverse, they've allowed local districts that control. And so that, to me, means we have a responsibility to make the decision on how we're going to proceed with our fall sports calendar. Because every district, I think the two superintendents that are on the board too, decided that way too. I know there was a concern over the classifications on when teams started. But the vote was to allow, in line with the Department of Education and the governor's request, to allow local districts to have those choices, to make those choices. So that was the direction that was taken by the FHSAA. Somewhat, surprisingly, that the task force that met didn't vote for their own recommendation, right? And so it was decided that it's the fairest ways, just like for school starts, and just like with how we manage our schools, they wanted local districts to make those decisions on how to start and what to do as far as requirements for these sports. So we have volleyball and we have football that are obviously close quarter sports that we're going to have the ability to make those decisions on how we proceed. So that is important as far as for our parents and our students to know going forward. So I assume that we weren't going to be starting on July 27th, but I know it's not in this calendar, but it is a calendar event.
In the past, FHSAA, if I recall, sets when we can start practice and when we can't.
That's correct.
And then anything to do with the operations of that typically are at the decision of the superintendent, unless I'm missing something with to do with the schedule. It's not part of the academic calendar. So, I mean, like, even in the sport that I've been involved with swim, they start, they may choose for that date to be the start of school, but I believe that isn't always the start of school date, does not correlate, I thought, with the first practice. Does it? Or am I missing?
No, for football or
For any sport. I mean, the first day of practice may not be the first day of school.
That's correct.
It could be either way. And so that's why I say it's really not been a decision I thought the board made, but it was more of an operational decision.
Right, but I think now, Thomas, it is a decision that each district is going to make going forward as far as.
But I'm saying FHSAA has always, they set the date, but locally it was still decided. You just couldn't start before a certain time, but you didn't necessarily. I mean, FHSAA, for example, in swimming says you could have started July 31st, But we may not have, the superintendent may have said, well, no, we're not starting. That's actually a school decision or an athletic decision through Mr. Bishop's office, and that may not start practice until the first day of school. But it was never one, it was always at the local decision of when they started.
Yeah.
It had to do with the calendar of whatever the athletics calendar was for those programs.
Right, so then maybe better the question would be, when are we going to start those sports? I mean, because there is concern, widespread concern over, how this is going to look for athletics. I mean, and we're not even getting into the issue of fans and all those things. And I'm just talking about the safety and protection of the student athlete and what we're doing. If we're going to have a standardized, if we're going to have our own questionnaire, and I know they're using the NFA, the National Federation of High School ones, but also a waiver, all those things that, to me, I would like to see us make a decision on as far as the calendar goes. Like, when will we be starting fall football? When will we be starting volleyball? Those things.
I know that Mr. Bishop has, oh, you want to? Oh, yeah, you can fix whatever I say. I know Mr. Bishop and the athletic directors between us and Hernando County, because I will tell you, I've been on, last week I think I was on 3 or 4 Zooms, 2 or 3 hours a day with superintendents across the state as a whole. And to address the Florida high school piece, we did want some direction, because I think we did get direction from DOE, and they said you will be open 5 days a week. You will open up in August. And I know some districts right now are opening the 31st. So they did get a little bit of guidance there to say, well, they got parameters for us to go from. And you know that I love sports, and you know I'm as competitive as the next one. But for Florida high school activities, to tell districts to have local control, and I appreciate local control, we preach about that all the time. But if Citrus County is going to open up on the 17th or 24th, Hernando County's already made the decision they're not going to open or start until the 31st. Their athletic directors have made that comment. I think there's too many moving parts for districts to make their own decision on when they can start. I'm not sure how I social distance football players. I don't know how I social distance volleyball players when we're sitting here trying to figure out how we're going to get our classrooms with all the desks lined up in the same direction, those types of things. So I say that because there's a lot of moving pieces, as much to the athletic world as there is to the academic side of us opening school. So I know that the athletic directors have come up with a plan. I think we were going to plan on sharing that with you all on Tuesday and then get your feedback, because we were kind of, since we got word, because I talked to the Superintendent Association the other day, and they're the ones that told us on Monday that they felt like, or the day after the meeting, they felt like that Florida High School was going to reconvene Thursday, Friday, or Monday. So we didn't know if they would come back out with a different recommendation or guidelines, and we just wanted to see that before we came out with a plan that said, here's what our plan is.
Right. So, I mean, and you're right, I know like Hernando County, they've already made the decision to wait until August 31st, right? I mean, so there's our counties that are making these decisions now. I just wanted to hear, from you and from staff that, what can we expect on Monday for football? Is that something that you feel that we should allow to start on Monday? I don't feel like that would be the best plan.
Correct.
But that's kind of what I want to hear from you. I mean, we have the other sports across country, and golf. We have all these sports. So I just kind of wanted to know, what is the thought on that?
I'll let Mr. Bishop share that, because we had made a decision as a staff and a district through the athletic departments that we were not going to start on Monday, because it's just, I can't just.
Yeah, certainly, not in the interest of digressing, but the conversation about the start date of athletics, the state FHSA establishes the first eligible date for practices. From there, as a district, we can pick from there moving forward when we want to begin. However, we cannot accelerate the beginning of practices prior to the date established by FHSA. Having said that, as Ms. Himmel said, I have been working very closely with our high school athletic directors as well as Hernando County's athletic directors. As the board knows, we are members of the GCA conference, which includes all Citrus County schools as well as all Hernando County schools. through conversations I've had with districts across the state, it's becoming more and more evident that school districts are thinking outside of the box as to how they can best provide an athletic experience for student athletes in the situation we're currently in. Part of those conversations include districts are making the decision of competing within the border, within their county only, not going beyond their county. Because we're a small school district, we only have 3 schools, I think that would, if we were to limit ourselves to playing in county only, that would necessitate our football teams playing each other 2, 3, 4 times in a season. I don't think that's reasonable. So having said that, I have coordinated meetings with our athletic directors as well as Hernando County athletic directors. We have established a plan. We were waiting to unveil our plan based on the action of the board today. We're coming before the board today to seek the approval to delay our opening of schools, as Ms. Himmel said, because of the increased enrollment in our Citrus Virtual School. Since once that vote is taken, and if in fact we are to move our schools back, our start date back to the 20th, and in conjunction with Hernando County Schools, because they too have delayed their opening of schools, as well as their beginning of sports practices, it will be my recommendation, I will recommend to the superintendent to bring forward to the board that we don't start our fall sport practices prior to August 24th. The reason for that is this: in conversations with both Hernando County ADs as well as Citrus County ADs, our ADs feel very strongly that our kids, because of the uncertainty of these times, they need to have the opportunity to come into school, to take care of their academics first, to take care to best prepare themselves in terms of expectations, because we know expectations are going to be much more complex and much different than they have in years past, for the reasons Ms. Himmel alluded to earlier. There's going to be a different way kids are going to walk down the hallway. We're going to have one-way hallways. We're going to have a different way of how they go to water fountains. Are water fountains available? Those are things that we're having to work through, and we want to make sure our kids are taken care of academically prior to starting athletically. Having said that, we already have a plan to compete in athletics for our fall sports against Hernando County Schools. We feel we already have a schedule that will be conducive to our student athletes. As football's been the sport that's kind of lifted out here today, so we'll talk about that. We feel we have a plan to where our football teams will be able to get an 8-game season. They can play seven contests against Hernando County Schools in county, and then they'll have an opportunity to play a bowl game. There is some conversation as to whether or not we'd still be eligible for state series. We're working with the FHSA to get some clarification on that. Okay, and I hope to have that information that I'll be prepared to present to you on Tuesday in terms of our eligibility for state series. I feel that our plan is well thought out. I feel that our plan, given the circumstances we face today, is a plan that will most certainly give our student athletes an opportunity to have a meaningful season. That by doing what we're doing, we are guaranteed the opportunity to schedule games. We're also guaranteed to give our kids an opportunity to play for a conference championship. And both those things are a win-win for our student athletes. So having said that, certainly if it's the will of the board, at our next Tuesday's meeting, if you'd like for me to come in and give a more formal presentation about our plan, I'll be more than glad to do that. But the reason why that has not been unveiled up until right now is because we were wanting to know whether or not we have the authority to delay the start of our school year. Okay?
I think that's a great idea. We can have a workshop at our next Tuesday workshop. We can talk about fall sports issues.
And what would you like the scope of that to be? Just the opening of the sports?
Yeah, I think just kind of what we can expect from the calendar, what we can expect from the recommendation that's going to be with football and volleyball. And then if we look at our other sports, swimming, golf, I mean, we have to ensure that there's locations for all those things. So I think it's a great idea.
Absolutely. We'll be prepared to bring that to you on Tuesday's meeting.
Can you, Ms. Powers, I know, because they'll,
You hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Good place, and also, how does the college people who come and scout our students, how do they fit in there too? Would you sort of include that into that too?
Absolutely, and that will be different pursuant to each sport, but certainly we can capture that as well. And we will. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Bishop. Mrs. Hamel?
Okay, with that being said, any other comments or thoughts on the calendar?
I just want to be sure, because we're going to get calls. We do need the 4 weeks from now until we let these kids back in our classrooms to be fully prepared for them. We couldn't start on Monday the 17th and end before Memorial Day. That's going to be the big public question.
I still will repeat that I believe that our schools need that much time for their master plan because every one of the master's schedules have started over.
And I understand it.
I know you do.
Yeah, because master schedule.
You've been a part of that.
done over the summer, long before now. I don't know how we've even progressed this far without any numbers. But that's the answer. I want us all to be on the same page as we're answering questions in the community. And so that's gonna be a biggie because,
And I know that Friday was the deadline for virtual school, but we're being very flexible with that. You can go to that site, you can still fill out a form, you're still going to get a phone call back from the district or from the staff member, and we're going to be very flexible to allow students to still continue to enroll in that, and also to come back to brick and mortar if they choose to do that before school starts.
So if I can just get clarification, just so something that if we were to extend it, are we, because it was reported that maybe we would reopen enrollment. Instead, are we going to look at that then on a case-by-case student need? So while it's technically not reopening it,
Right.
you will still be able to go through that process like if you were enrolling.
Correct.
And at this point, we're not telling anybody that we won't find a home for them.
Correct. And you could say the process has changed,
Okay.
okay? Because they are filling out the forms and they are being called back from the district.
At some point, we can't do that indefinitely, though.
Correct.
So
we'll have to find
maybe
out.
that's not a today, but at some point, maybe that can be. So anyone who can, is thinking about and hasn't made a decision about virtual, this is the time. They need to, soon fill out their, go online, go through that process, and then staff will be able to assist them. Is that correct?
Correct.
So virtual school, then enrollment, we are allowing that to stay open a little further than,
It's not open like it was, but you can
Right.
still go to that site, fill out a form, and we'll contact you.
okay.
And we're still allowing them to get in.
And then our virtual school's gonna start on the same day
Same calendar.
as our brick and mortar, so that they're not gonna be starting any earlier, they'll be the same
Okay.
exact day, okay.
and they have to spend the first semester in virtual, and then they could decide to come back into brick and mortar. Or stay the whole year in virtual.
That is our intent, but I will tell you, we'll be very flexible because I do believe that some people have signed up for virtual, thinking it was similar to last spring. And you all know that this will be a lot more intensive for our students and our parents, and we're going to be very flexible, and I will just share this comment with you all. I was in my office yesterday, and they said, Diane from the governor's office is on the phone, would you take the call? And I said, of course, and I got on the phone, and she said, hold for the governor. So I had a 25-minute conversation with him yesterday, and he asked me that question specifically. Will you allow students to come back into the brick and mortar schools after they've enrolled in virtual and started? And we're going to be very flexible with that. And everything will be like a case by case.
Yeah.
Okay. We're not going to let them flip flop today, tomorrow, and back and forth like that, because we're going to have teachers in place. And just so you all know that all the teachers hired for virtual, we've only posted those internally, because if we have a big group of students who go back to brick and mortar or back to virtual, we've still got the same staff, and we're not. We'll still maintain our staff.
So, and we're not talking about just the end of the semester coming back into brick and mortar, but you're saying on occasion, or if a parent were to request their child leave virtual and come back to brick and mortar,
We're going to work with
to
them
work.
to make that happen.
And I appreciate that you've been trying very hard. Staff, for those that are looking to go to virtual, the question becomes, okay, when we don't have 2,600 virtual students, will there be a home for me back at my previous school? So it sounds like when you've been looking at staffing plans that you've been taking that into consideration. So if a student does decide, I'm going to come back there, there's space hopefully for them, and then God willing, there's space for that staff member when they're ready to transition
Sure.
back.
Yes. Thank you.
Time frame for the teachers to give you some feedback on Plan A or Plan B?
When we send it out on the 11th, we'll determine how many days. We'll email it out to them, and hopefully they'll get it back to us within a few days. It's not going to be sent out today and come back tonight, so we'll give them some time to look at it or
So we
talk
don't
among
have to
themselves.
Have it by next Tuesday?
Correct.
Okay.
I just wanted you all to see copy of what we proposed, just so you can get some thoughts, and you may have some other ideas for us. Okay? Any other from the board? I don't know, do you have any viewing cards about the calendar?
Deal with, calendar. I think they deal with calendar. You have to tell me as I call you. Rick Dozier, IB virtual brick and mortar. Have we answered your question?
You may have.
All right. Thank you.
All right, we won't throw you away.
Bernard Wells, student thought in school. Is that brick and mortar? Bernard Wells?
There's a little delay when you talk to the
Okay.
kids out here.
We'll just check to make sure it's not outside.
Sir Bernard Wells?
Reconsidering the electronic learning as well.
Nope.
Well, doesn't need to go through.
Yeah, I'll ask her.
Mr. Wells is not there?
No.
Okay. Um,
Yes.
Hazel, Tan?
Question for IB
No, you,
students.
ma'am, you need to go to the microphone.
And I have to read one little statement before we do citizens' comments, and this is something that we read every time we do that. Each listed speaker will be allowed 3 minutes to make a presentation. Speakers are asked to address the issue at hand and refrain from using obscenities. That's why you mask guys are over here. Vulgarities or other breaches of respect, and refrain from words or statements which, from their usual construction and common acceptance, are construed as insults or tend to incite violence or breach of peace. We ask that you model, follow character traits: cooperation, responsibility, citizenship, kindness, respect, honesty, and self-control, and tolerance. The school board will not discuss or take official action on any presentation that you're making. We're going to act on this calendar. Any persons present who wish to speak must fill out a green card, which are located in the back of the room, and the chair calls the first speaker, Mrs. Hazel Tan.
Right. Question with regards to IB students, because there seems to be in the website indicating that if they are IB and they go to FLBS, they have to be in the brick and mortar school. Healthcare person, I am very, very concerned. I train my children, but in fact, I have some stuff where they are fine with wearing the mask. However, when they get tired, they go straight to doing this, and that is an issue. We've seen that a lot, and so can they go FLBS with being in the IB program?
Okay, I think Dr. Huger was going to field that.
If I can address that.
That's a question that
So,
might be out
I
there.
can sit down, right?
Yes. We have a plan that we're presenting to the school board. On Tuesday, we're workshopping that goes to the state. Within that plan is what we call an innovative learning plan for our academies and programs. So we are working on updating our website. At one time, we were not able to do that, but the state has given us direction to do that. So our IB students will be able to work virtually. We have a virtual process. Mr. Bittner is actually leading that process. So students are going to have that option to work in a virtual environment. You can still be an IB at
Mr. Bittner is going to what now? Because that's really what we all are interested in. Mr. Bittner will be doing what for the process?
He is leading the process with the IB staff to help develop what that virtual product will look like.
Do we have to re-enroll our children?
No.
Okay.
Nope.
Make that
Mr.
clear,
Bittner's-
Dr. Hebert, that it's not available to online, the IB curriculum.
Right, the IB curriculum is not available for virtual, so we're doing our own, what we call innovative learning plan to allow students to work virtually, but then still participate as a regular Lecanto High School IB student.
Do they go to school for that?
They stay home. You can keep them home, they can work from home, they can do it all from home.
And we don't have to re-enroll in it?
Nope.
Okay, we'll just have to wait.
Just wait, Mr. Bittner will be in contact with you, staff at the school will be in contact with you.
And Dr. Hebert, while you're at the microphone, for those of us that are going to watch on the TV, we've got academies in every school, the Electronic Academy, the Health Academy, EMT, Drafting. So would you explain this innovative learning, that how we're going to treat some of those kids, say, Health Academy at Coast River High School, and explain innovative learning?
All of our academies are going to have the option if students want to participate through a virtual environment. That means those students do not want to come to brick and mortar. Those students want to work in a virtual environment. The academies all have plans in place for students to be able to take their courses,
from home in a virtual environment and still maintain status at being, say, the Christopher High School Health Academy, the Citrus High School Computer Science Academy, Academy of Environmental Science, the IB Academy, as well as the Lecanto School of the Art. They've all created what we've called an innovative learning plan that allows for that. So it's a virtual option. They don't have to re-enroll. Parents will choose to say, I'd like to be a part of that, and then we will then do that, and then they still work from home.
And this option just came up. It wasn't something that, we considered those academies right from the get-go, but this option for innovative learning. So our teachers in our brick and mortar classrooms are going to do double duty so that these kids can stay in their academies and still get their degrees and their certifications. So.
And Ms. Counts, thank you for saying that, because it is not it's not that we can just turn a switch on. These teachers are actually going to be providing, that are working with these, they're going to be providing 2 separate environments at the same time, which is not what a face-to-face instructor would have to do or a virtual instructor. They're having to do both. And I applaud these teachers that have done that. I admire them and I'm grateful to them, so thank you.
The school administrators at each of the schools met with the staff of those teachers to say, are you willing, are you able to do that? And they've all said, we want to do what's best for kids, because that's what I think we're about. Our superintendent believes that, so they believe that as well. So we're working through that. If we would have been able to offer through FLBS, obviously we would have, but FLBS doesn't offer many of the special academy courses that we want to offer. So.
And this is truly a kind of a hybrid model that we talked about. For the academies, that they're going to be able to have that option. Now, one of the things that I did have a question that I was asked is, can a parent allow their child to go to school part of the time with the brick and mortar and then do virtual, let's say every Friday? Is that a part of that?
The option is parents choose to say, I'd like my child to come to brick and mortar because I'm comfortable sending them, or I'd like my child to be home because I'm not comfortable with them being in the environment. So we're not offering the option to say, I want to come Monday and Tuesday, or then stay home. You're either 100% you want to be brick and mortar or 100% virtual. Now you change your mind, even with any of the academies, we're allowing the option that you say, okay, after the 9 weeks, I'm ready to make a change. We then meet with you and then we transition you back one way or the other. So we're being very flexible with the transition from being virtual to being brick and mortar. Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Hebert, what about WTC? Are they going to be following our new schedule?
No.
When will they start?
We met with them yesterday and we're going to meet with them one more time. We believe that they'll stay on the same schedule because their hours for students to complete is a lot different than what we do in K-12.
So they're going to start the 10th?
They'll be on the regular schedule. Any high school students, they will send out to them that they currently already have enrolled, but their students will have the availability to go ahead and start then. If not, they'll get them caught up. That will not be held against them because we're starting later.
Okay, thank you.
Any other green cards on the
We've
calendar?
got some that are going to deal with after we do the masks.
Okay.
Have we finished all of the comments possibly on reopening brick and mortar or virtual? And now you would like a consensus.
I would like a vote.
You would like a vote.
A vote.
She just needs to
The vote would be whatever the teachers vote on or plan.
No, we're not doing that calendar. All I'm asking for today is the approval from the board to allow us to extend our start date to August 20th.
All right, I'll make a motion that we approve the start date to August the 20th.
Second.
Whoa, I have a motion by Mr. Dodd and I have a second by Mrs. Bryant to move the start date for our students in both virtual and brick and mortar to the 20th.
One last question. Academy of Environmental Science, do we know if any impact this will have? Are they okay with this? Have we reached out to them?
We have talked to them, met with them, and they're good to go.
I'm good.
All
We're
those
good to
in,
go on this schedule, on our.
okay. All those in favor of moving the opening date to the 20th?
Aye.
Opposed? We did it.
Thank you.
We have to say right now, and everybody appreciates it, that, everybody's anxious to get back to school. The teachers that I've talked to are anxious to get back to school. The kids are anxious to get back to school. but they've got to realize that you can't just move a master schedule when you don't have the numbers and just say, oh, we're gonna open the front door and everybody come in and take a seat. We may not have that seat available for you. So I have to give a comment to our staff, and we've had a committee of 50 people working on this since March on the opening of the schools, and I'm so proud of them, and I'm so glad they're here. So they really deserve a lot of credit for where we are today.
And I would like to add a public comment about our teachers. You know, when you go around the community, sometimes people will say, oh, I bet the teachers had it easy when they were teaching virtual. And I make a couple comments, because I usually know these people, but, you know, when you look at what the state of Florida did last March, you know, because again, I went to a chamber meeting on Friday. We talked to Commissioner Corcoran on Thursday night. He said, we are not closing schools, so I shared that message. And even though people think I didn't know what I was doing or talking about, that afternoon at 4 o'clock, I'm on a press conference watching the governor and said, we're closing schools. So, and our teachers had to do the same thing. So I just want to commend what our teachers and staff did last spring. They took the bull by the horns, and I'll pick on Terry. I think I saw him dancing or something in a video for virtual PE, and I always said, I wish I knew how to do PE virtually, but Terry then figured it out. So, you know, our teachers were doing that, and we talk about the fall, and you talk about the pre-planning and the training. We're going to have teachers teaching virtual. We're going to have the same teacher teaching brick and mortar, and there's just a lot of things that our teachers are going to have to step up to the plate, and they always do. And I don't think that, and I'm hoping that last spring raised the awareness and the respect that our teachers deserve. So I just say that publicly to you. I'm preaching to the choir, but a lot of things happened last spring and will happen on the 20th. No matter what we've done, the 20th will be a fun day. All right, so if we don't have any more comments about the calendar.
Just one more.
Yes.
I went into a restaurant, and this little girl that I taught, a full-grown woman now with children of her own, and she said, thank you for being a teacher. And that's,
I know, it's sweet.
because she was busy with her children, and she knew
Very
some
good.
things that she didn't know before.
There's a lot of respect out there for them. Okay, our next topic, probably the one that has the most, I'll say not heated, but difference of opinions, is about the mask.
Didn't say needed.
We've talked for several weeks about what we want to do with masks. We've watched, we've gotten comments from, I've worked closely with Tito from the Department of Health. We've read the CDC guidelines. We've followed some of what other school districts are doing. And our recommendation to you today will be about our masks for our staff and our students. And what I would like to recommend today, and Mr. Bradshaw has come up, if we decide to do this today, then we will need something called staff, student, visitors, anybody on, okay. We're going to talk about masks with human beings on campus. So he's got a draft emergency policy, if we all agree to do this, so that you all can review it, get back to him, then we can bring it back so we can get it published and get it in the paper so parents will know that. So he can go over that in a few minutes. What my recommendation to the board today will be that we will require masks on school buses, because I don't think that I'll have any school bus where there's 15 students on it. So I would like to require masks for our students on the buses. I would like to require masks on our students, especially at the high school, middle school, when they're changing classes. Because you've all been a high school student, and keeping students apart from each other will be a challenge. So technically, if you're in a seat, and this isn't what the policy reads, but if you're in a seat, such as in the classroom, and we're right now working with our administrators at each school, we're working with maintenance and everybody, we're working where we can get the desk as far apart as possible. We're getting them to where they're all facing the front or in one direction, because you know you've walked in many classrooms where they had the round tables or they had 4 desks facing each other, and we're doing group projects. We've got where they've got the little reading groups in the elementary world. So we're going to have to meet with teachers and staff and limit many of those activities. So if we require it on the buses, in the hallways, if the student is up out of his or her seat, that student should have a mask on. If they're walking to the cafeteria, they should have a mask on. If they're going to the bathroom, they should have a mask on. So we'll have to come up with a plan for the individual classrooms. I today am not recommending a required mask for kindergarten through second. Those classrooms are usually, and we'll keep them smaller, where they've got 18 students, we'll get the desk as far apart as possible. We know that teachers sometimes need to see the kids' mouth move, especially in the younger age when they're teaching them speech and things like that. I've got for the staff, what we will work with the staff and what they're comfortable with to maintain their social distancing, the 6 feet away. And if they can't do that, then they'll be required to put a mask on. I'm even thinking teachers can take a piece of tape, put it in front of their desk that marks 6 feet from their chair to the desk and things like that. So there'll be a lot of things that we're going to want to put in place with this mask mandate that we'll have to go to individual classrooms and try to make it work and do the best we can and work with our students and remind them how important that is. They are in the process of getting like arrows put in the hallways for one-way hallways where feasible. Not every school's made for that. We're getting areas where, and you'll see a lot of this on Tuesday when we bring the plan to you, where if a student's going to clinic, they'll have chairs outside 6 feet away where the students will sit in those. So there's a lot of things going on right now to make sure this happens. But today I'm asking for you to allow us to mandate masks on the bus, and technically when the student's out of his or her seat, like when they're walking between classes and those types of things. And I'm open for discussion.
And mandate for visitors?
If a visitor comes to campus, we're going to limit visitors, we'll be limiting parents, we'll be limiting vendors coming on campus. We are probably for the first 9 weeks, there won't be volunteers in our schools. So we'll be limiting that because we're trying to limit the number of people on our campuses. It's not a ideal, happy thing for parents when we tell them that they can't walk their little ones to class the first day, but it's just one of those things that we have to, it's reality right now what we need to do.
And I'm going to bring up exactly what I brought up the last meeting. You know that. We have, hopefully the 2,500 that are going into virtual are, I'm not going to wear a mask people. But right now we've got a very volatile country. They had deputies at Walmart yesterday stopping people that didn't have a mask. So when we offer a mandate rather than an expectation, I am concerned about how we're going to enforce it. I brought up the bus driver at the last meeting. When that little child is standing on the corner and she doesn't have a mask. Now we're going to give our bus drivers masks and ask that little girl put it on before she gets on the bus. But what if she comes from that family and says, my daddy says I don't have to wear a mask?
They could do virtual school.
But we're going to leave her on the corner then.
We will not leave any student on the corner.
But so I'm concerned when we make a mandate rather than a recommendation or an expectation, how we're going to enforce it. If we have people that, if we have a teacher that says, I'm not going to wear a mask, I have a medical condition and I'm not wearing a mask, we're going to have to make exceptions to some of
Well,
those.
when you see the policy, there are exceptions because there are things in the law that we cannot enforce.
But if we just
But when you talk about enforcing the mask, we're going to have to treat this as a dress code. That if a girl shows up, not dress code, policy. But correct. But still, we enforce other things on campus that people do not want to do. So we'll just have to deal with those on a one-on-one basis.
Okay, but just as long as it's covered and they understand. I mean, a mandate says that we're expecting this type of behavior, and if you don't do that behavior, you're subject to discipline. And I think the masks are hopefully not going to be around next year, but I just don't want to get into, I don't want to get into a battle that we're going to lose the war on.
Do we not think it's going to be a challenge? It's going to be a huge challenge.
And I don't.
And there's going to be a different scenario every single day.
Yeah, and I'm just looking at people outside in the community punching one another. And God, I think Orlando, somebody pulled a gun on somebody who wasn't wearing a mask. I just don't want to bring that temperament into our schools.
And I also think that if you all agree to do this, or whether you do or don't, that's up to you. But I believe that there'll be parents now come back to brick and mortar, but I think there'll be parents who leave. Because I was at the grocery store last night and I had 3 different parents tell me, do not mandate masks or we're going to virtual. So there's a temperament out there. It's a little split, But we have to do what we think is in the best interest of our kids for the majority of our kids.
But we can't do it with just a recommendation and expectation. It has to be a mandate.
My recommendation today will be a mandate. Unless you all change it.
I think it's probably, yeah, hand up first.
Fine.
I just want to thank Ms. Himmel for her plan. I know that she and staff have worked really hard to come up with this, and I know it wasn't easy.
Thank you.
Right.
Scott?
Yes, yes, I too am, pleased. I mean, we've got to err on the side of caution and voting, for the safety of our children. And, it was brought up last week, and we talked a little bit about it. I think it's a good plan. My question on the buses now, if we're not going to have K through second grade wear masks in school, are they going to have a mask on when they're on the bus? We are going to require that, right? So those confined areas, the hallways, those things, that's important. I know you said we're going to try to social distance as best we can in the classroom, and we can talk about this more next Tuesday because, I do have some of the questions about how the classrooms are going to look, but, I think for our teachers' sake that the ability for them to be able to teach without a mask, as long as they're social distancing, is a good way to go. I mean, and that, your idea, and you're talking about the line and about making sure that's the case, I mean, that is common sense to me. I mean, if we social distance, we're social distance now, 6 feet apart, we don't have masks on, and I am good with that, but I do fully support your recommendation or your mandate to require masks at this level. We may get pushback from some people who want it across the board at all times. But I think if we focus on the social distance aspect of it, and we try to manage the classroom as best we can, and you mentioned the numbers on the bus will be less and all those things, if we can manage that, I think we'll be providing for the safety of our children much more than if it was just recommended. So I agree.
Mr. Kennedy?
I too want to echo though, the superintendent and I have talked for weeks about masks, and I appreciate, because I know this has been a hard decision and staff has really struggled with this. My concerns initially, as we've talked about, is first is how we're going to legally deal with it. And I'm going to ask Mr. Bradshaw a couple of questions here in a minute on that. The other one has been what Ms. Counts touched on, and that is how do we practically accomplish this without this becoming a burden that is impacting academics in other ways. And I think that the approach that you're talking about with the policy is bringing some common sense to that and to trying empowering both the parents, the students, and the teacher and addressing that. And I think that is it, because there needs to be consideration of all of those parties. I would, Mr. Bradshaw, if I can ask you a couple of questions because I did have some legal questions. And Mr. Bradshaw has actually been one of a number of phone calls that I've had over the last weeks in particular, but certainly over the last week. And I appreciate you working through some of that with me.
No problem.
First of all, the concern I did have legally is that the dress code really was not one that I thought addressed the legal challenges of this. And
Well, it wouldn't, because the dress code only applies to the students. And so if you're going to mandate masks and make it across the board, then it needs to be a rule or a policy that the school board implements. Because it not only will affect students, it'll affect students, teachers, volunteers, vendors, parents who want to come onto campus, and although you're going to limit the amount of interaction that they're going to have, you're either requiring everyone to wear a mask or you're leaving it up to them. If you're going to require it, it needs to cover every single person who's on campus, or in a facility, or a school bus, or district-owned vehicles, all that.
this is a 90-day policy. It will not automatically renew, is that correct?
It's an emergency policy. It expires by law after 90 days unless the board renews it, or during that time, you go through the other process of making it a permanent rule.
And as far as addressing when someone has issues with regards to their health and diagnoses, there will be waivers or exceptions that meet the law to ensure that they are.
There are plenty of exceptions that you have that I've built, into this. There are certain people who have phobias or medical conditions or anything else that would prevent them from wearing a mask, and they would need to provide a doctor's, note or something along those lines. There are, certain times when you won't need to wear a mask if you're outdoors and socially distancing. If you're inside and can social distance, then it's always not necessary. During healthcare, going to the clinic if they need to look, in your face or in your mouth. Other for like teaching purposes. I know there are teachers who are trying to teach students how to, speech pathologists or language therapists and everything, that students need to see, the mouth move to be able to do those words. And then in those instances, the teacher should wear a face shield during that time. So there are plenty of exceptions that are built in to hopefully cover most everything that I could think of.
Is this policy being then the statutes that enforce it? Are they based in health and safety?
Yes. Health, safety, and welfare.
Yes. This policy, we haven't seen the policy yet, so I take you're still working on it, but...
I have a draft. When Ms. Himmel talked to me, I went ahead because I didn't want to try to wait till to hear what your vote was, so I kind of come up with a draft. And then that way that it can get implemented sooner than later. Because I think that if you're going to do something like this, you approve it, you approve the policy, it goes up on the webpage. It gives ample time for the teachers to look at it, for parents to look at it. So if you're going to make that decision, to go ahead and have it in place as soon as possible.
So we'll be able to see it at next Tuesday's workshop, and then...
I plan on at least giving y'all a draft of it and ask you to get back in touch with me individually. Obviously, you can't speak to each other about it, but you can call me and discuss, did you think of this, or I don't like this, and I'll make my notes, and then you can have the full discussion next Tuesday, but go ahead and get it on the agenda. And then any changes that need to be made, the discussion can be had at that point in time, and with the consensus of the board to make the change to go ahead and vote on the policy. Yes, it won't be just given to you next Tuesday to review. I plan on giving it to you today or tomorrow.
Sam, we're not going to vote on this today, or is there still going to be a vote to move forward?
There's going to be a vote, yeah. Because what I anticipate is you're going to vote yes, we want to move forward with mandatory masks. Now we need the policy, to go along with it. Because if you said no, we don't want to vote on mandatory masks, there's no sense in that, drafting and finishing a policy and getting it to you.
So we'll have that draft to review before next week, and we'll have a good chance to talk about it at a meeting.
I anticipate giving it to you today.
And I still need a little bit more information on how we're going to enforce it. Will we mandate it? How are we going to enforce it? Are we going to dress code the kids goes to ISS for the day?
It's not a dress code.
How are we going to enforce it? What are we going to do when a kid refuses to wear a mask or a teacher refuses to wear a mask?
Well, if a teacher refuses to wear a mask, first off, it's not, just the guillotine, right off the bat. You're kindly reminded that there is a policy that mandates the wearing of a mask if you want to talk about teachers. And you would remind them of this, and then I would anticipate the principal having a conversation with them, maybe the director of HR having a conversation with them. And then at some point in time, it's insubordination for not following a direct order from your supervisor, and it's also misconduct for not following the policies of the school board. So you can start an enforcement, some type of a disciplinary proceeding. I would pray that never comes to that most people, I think, are going to comply.
I'm just concerned about the temperament of the communities across this country about masks, and I just hate to bring it into our classrooms.
I understand. There's not an easy answer to any of the questions that you're asking. I think that the tone of the state right now are more and more school districts going to mandating masks. You know, especially your larger districts and medium-sized districts, there are some very small districts that are not doing it. You know, they have 600 kids or 1,200 students, and so they can probably handle it better. But I think that the consensus around the state, though, is with the rise in numbers of what's going on. And, you know, and I think, I can't remember his last name, but I know it's Tito. You know, he said, huh?
Rubio.
Mr. Rubio. And he said, you know, they can't mandate that you do this, you know, but, you know, and the CDC can't mandate it. That's going to come from the governor to be able to mandate masks like that. Even if the county commission mandated it, you know, for home rule purposes, they don't have control over the school district. So it'd have to be the governor that would do it. So, you know, it needs to come from you, but there is a rise in the levels of the positive test, and I'm certainly no expert on any of that, but I think that the concern is there that when, you know, without the ability to social distance, you know, that it's, you know, a lot of people feel it's important if you're not going to be able to social distance, because that's the recommendation from the CDC. Obviously, it's up to the 5 of you whether or not you want to mandate it or not, or just make it a recommendation.
But we're in a situation where the governor hasn't mandated it. Now, county commissioners in Citrus County haven't mandated it, so we'll be the first.
And you get...
And that puts us right in the line of fire.
No one ever said being an elected official was easy.
Yeah. And then one other thing that's coming up out there in the community that's raising a lot of cane is First Amendments. What are you going to do when we're challenged with the first? You can't tell me that I have to wear a mask, so I have a right to come in here.
Well, I don't
The
think...
public schools,
the First
deny
Amendment...
them.
Well, they do not have a right.
I think what,
I mean, there is the expectation, and when school districts for years, you know, since time immemorial has said, you know, we welcome our parents in and everything else. But if a parent acts up at a football game, they don't have a right to be there. We have them removed, and if they continue on, we have them trespassed.
Okay.
They follow our rules.
Okay, so we'll discipline the children, and we'll discipline our teachers, and we'll discipline our bus drivers if they don't follow our mandate.
And their parents.
And
I'm not saying that we will discipline them, but it is built in there that you could discipline them. I would imagine and I would hope that with some explanation of what our expectations are and going over the data with people, that if y'all choose to do this, that people would go. I can tell you, if, you know, everything's online now, but I still have the old policy manual that was in a 3-ring binder that's that thick.
I have one, it's that thick.
And I will bet you that if you survey all of the teachers and staff and everything out there, there's policies in there that they do not like, but they do it.
Mr. Bradshaw, that was one of my questions, and I think you gave me more comfort in that because this is not the reason for this is under health, safety, and what was that?
The health, safety, and welfare.
And welfare. It creates a little different legal standings than my right to express myself by the T-shirt that I wear.
Correct.
That has that.
And by Florida statute, I mean, for one of the, I can't remember the exact statute, but y'all are in charge of the health, safety, and welfare of students and staff and the school district. So I think, you know, you're on good grounds to be able to implement this.
And then, as far as, have you looked at other districts' policies? And I think because there's a number of districts, I think I had 16 or so as of Friday.
Yes.
I'm
sorry, I didn't mean.
No, are the policies the same, or are they as different as we have, you know, people?
I think that each district drafts their own policy to suit, you know, their own district's needs, but the majority of them, the basic core of them are pretty uniform throughout the state.
And that being that they are being mandated when social distancing is not
correct
available.
Correct.
And then if anyone doesn't have anything for Mr. Bradshaw, I wanted to see if maybe we could ask Mr. Rubio some questions.
Okay.
Well, I just,
I'm sorry.
yeah, with Mr. Bradshaw though, and like Mr. Kenny alluded to, and I just wanted to, I know Ms. Counts, you had said that we were the first, but there are many other school districts, I mean, even her name.
No, I'm saying we're the first of any government entity in Citrus County to do it.
Correct.
Yeah, I know the other guys have done, but they also they're coming in from cities that have invoked the mandated mask in their areas. But we don't have anything in the county, we don't have the governor backing us, and we're first out. And I just hate to burden our teachers with another thing they've got to watch out for.
Governor's politely left it up to you, Ms. County.
Yeah.
The point of it is the safety and the welfare of the children. That's the point of having a mask. It's not just because you like masks.
Correct.
And I think Tito Rubio, the first thing he said when he spoke to us at the last meeting was, I'm wearing this mask to protect you, not me.
Correct.
So,
He can speak to that more, but it's my understanding that the main reason of wearing a mask is to protect other people.
yes, that's what he said.
Although I mean, I would think that it would also protect you some ways because, you know, by virtue of wearing one, but I think that was the explanation the CDC and Florida Department of Health gave us. The main reason is to protect other people from you, so that's why, you know.
Yeah, and then this is probably a Mrs. Himmel question, but if we have a teacher in the classroom and they decide, you know, I'm just not going to be concerned if a kid is not wearing a mask in my classroom, or how are you gonna police this thing? The teachers are gonna have to run them up to the front office because they're not wearing a mask?
Well, you know, I think that
What are we gonna do with
those are things that are going to evolve as situations start to arise. It's hard to think of every single scenario and come up with a plan for it. You know, I don't think there's no playbook on how to handle a pandemic in the United States, or
No.
especially in the school system. So you do the best you can and kind of tweak it as we go along.
So then, that's just a reservation I have with the idea of a mandate rather than an expectation or a recommendation. It tells our teachers that, you know, you've got to, what is he gonna do with the child in the classroom that's refusing to conform?
I can tell you kind of across the state, that has been that, you know, if they refuse, then they put them into the virtual learning programs.
Okay, so would that be our
Yes.
choice for discipline, is that they?
It won't be a discipline, it'll be a reassignment by the superintendent.
It's a question of semantics, Mr. Bradshaw.
No, ma'am, because you're not taking away any of their, you know, right to a public education. You're not, you know, it won't be a suspension, it won't be an expulsion. It'll be simply that if you will not follow our rules, then we're going to place you into another school setting. Same thing that we do with students that are, you know, when we have behavior problems and not everything comes before the board on student discipline, the students get reassigned to other schools because of certain issues, and that's also for the health, safety, and welfare of the students and the staff at certain schools, so.
Okay, I like that analogy.
Yes, ma'am.
Due process will still be followed with regards to whether that's a staff member or a student.
Of course.
So that would follow that same
Of course,
deadline.
if they're entitled to due process, they will receive the same amount of due process that they would receive if everyone was at brick and mortar.
So
Absolutely.
if it rose to a repeated situation, whether it's a staff member or a student, at some point, the superintendent would have to make a recommendation, and it could come before us.
Correct.
The hope is that there are other alternatives that we use for discipline.
Absolutely. That's why I said at the very beginning, you know, it's going to be a learning experience for everybody, including the students and the staff. And so, you know, you need to, steel fist, a velvet glove or whatever, you know. So you go in there and you try to, you know, to make things work as much as possible. I can't tell you that you will not have students and/or staff and/or vendors and/or parents who are going to just flat out refuse and make, you know, that this is not what they're going to do. But, you know, if y'all pass the policy and make the rule, then you know, the superintendent and all will deal with it on this side, because we'll follow the policy. The superintendent will follow the policy, same as she does every single other one that y'all do.
Mr. Bradshaw, do you require your staff members to have a mask on?
I do not require them right now because my staff, I've got 2 people in my office, I've got 4 people in my office, 1 in another office, and everybody's about 30 feet apart.
Okay.
So, but I do not allow anyone into my office right now. I don't even allow the public into my office. And when we have to go outside, I require them to wear a mask when they go and meet with people.
That was what I was
Yes.
under that.
Yes. Well, you know, Mr. King, I've worn a mask for months now.
You got me wearing one, sir.
So,
It,
I got a black one now too.
okay, you said,
Mr. Rubio, is he available for us to be
Well,
able
let
to?
me ask one more question for our classrooms. We've got some things that you mentioned that were going to be exceptions, but we've got particular classes, band and chorus.
correct.
And so in the classroom, the children can remove their mask if the curriculum requires them to.
If the supervisor allows it, they can socially distance. If they're playing some musical instruments. Okay.
Ms. Counts, that's in our plan that'll be brought to you on Tuesday about chorus and band. And right now that band directors, chorus teachers, and them may have different plans for inside because, and you can ask Mr. Rubio, he can answer this better than I do, but when kids start singing and playing instruments, there's a lot more molecules coming out of their mouth, and therefore they may have to find a place that's a lot larger or practice out or do those activities outside.
Okay.
So, but
They
they've got that in the
wear a mask
plan.
if they're outside,
They'll bring that to you.
If they can socially distance.
if they can socially distance, can do that.
You can't run outside and everybody get into a, you know, for lack of a better term, a huddle. So,
Really?
And then, Rubio said 15 minutes in passing, and I kind of took a little breath with the kids passing from class to class, because I think 4 to 7 minutes is our usual passing time on our campuses. So, but we're going to require those masks when they leave the classroom and they're passing.
yes. Because you won't be socially distancing in the hallway.
Right.
Yes, ma'am.
The one-way hallways.
Not all of them.
Not all of them.
I can tell you that when I've been to other counties and not in school, obviously, but the expectation was when you went out to eat, you wore a mask from the time you walked in till you went to your table. When you sat down at your table, you could take it off. When you got back up, if you had to use the restroom, you put it back on to go and to use the restroom. When you came and wear it all the way until you get back. So there are counties that have, and there weren't any fistfights outside.
Yeah. I just don't want this to be a burden to the teachers or the bus drivers. I can't say yes to this if it's going to be a burden and they've got to go on mask patrol instead of teaching or driving.
Well, you know, I can't promise you anything, but really outside of, limiting the amount of students in certain areas, and if you think of it like this, if students are congregating in certain areas, they're under supervision there anyhow. So, if they're in courtyards and things, they're just not out there by themselves, so we already have people. And it's no different than looking to see if you've got something offensive on your shirt or you're not complying with dress code. It just doesn't work well being a dress code.
Because it applies to adults.
Because it applies to adults, yes. So, I don't believe, and I think that probably after the first couple weeks, it's kind of like when the kids come back to school and then, and they dress code them for a good 2 weeks because, the clothes that they bought, that mama bought them or daddy bought them, don't comply. And then after that, it kind of settles down after that.
Did you see the Dennis Menace cartoon in the paper yesterday?
No, ma'am, I don't.
Well, the one child had on this mask. The other child had on this spaceman mask. And he said, but it's a mask.
But it is a mask. There's.
Are we going to have that problem if we mandate masks and we're going to get all these?
There's a definition of what qualifies for a mask.
Okay. Just check. When you mandate something, I have a problem with that when you don't know exactly how we're going to go and.
No, ma'am, I put in here, commercially produced mask or cloth face coverings and give the link to the CDC website that tells you how to make one if you want to.
Okay. I just don't want any fistfights in the hallways.
You're gonna have fistfights in the hallways whether there's mask or no mask. But,
That's usually over girls now.
But hopefully not over wearing a mask.
Yeah.
Mr. Bradshaw, thank you very much. I know the amount of time you've spent on this one issue is monumental. You really have tried to address concerns of both legal concerns, about personal rights concerns, and about trying to provide, I think, a common sense policy, and I appreciate that very much.
Well, and I look forward to getting it to you and getting your feedback on it. Like I said, call me and discuss it, and because, it's a brand new world, and you may think of something that I did not think of, or I thought of something that you don't, want it worded different, or however it is, but I've tried to be as comprehensive as possible and cover as many things as possible.
And you might be able to get it to us today, so we can.
Yes.
Great, that's perfect.
Yes, my plan is to give it to you today, so that you have plenty of time. So that we can, because if you vote to move forward with a yes, then, my suggestion would be to implement. It's an emergency policy. It's only good for 90 days unless you renew it or turn it into a permanent one. So, that way it gives everybody the opportunity to read it and to start, the teachers become comfortable with it, especially before the August 3rd, when Ms. Himmel's going to have teachers back for the 2 work days. So, and I did speak to Ms. Blair, and if y'all do implement it, I spoke to Ms. Blair about when I do the code of conduct video, I'll go ahead and do, and she says, I'm doing a video on this, and this, and I said, well, let's make sure that we do one on this policy to go out to staff and teachers also. I mean, to teachers and students
And
also.
in our last meeting, Mr. Rubio said he would do a video for us in conjunction with your code of conduct on the importance of wearing a mask.
Absolutely.
And that would be a perfect segue if you would.
I'll try, if Ms. Blair is watching, then maybe we could have Mr. Rubio do a short, do the front part of it, then I can go into the policy.
Yeah.
And she's good at splicing things together, so we don't have to coordinate our calendars to that. All right, anything else? All right, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rubio? We promised we will not keep you over 2 hours last time. Thank you so much for the time that you spent with us.
It's quite all right, no problem at all.
Mr. Rubio, thank you for, I'm sorry, did you have an update? Did you want to start?
No, when you had mentioned about elected officials, we do have one place in the county that is the county courthouse.
Yes.
The administrative judge did issue an order that everyone entering the courthouse must wear a mask. So that is already in place in our county, as a reminder.
No, that was an excellent point. Mr. Rubio, first of all, thank you for coming. I did learn that since the last visit you had, that not all of some of your colleagues do this. And so I'm grateful that you are willing to come forward and answer our questions. And I'm grateful that when I've had a question too, I've called you and you have helped me out, and I am very appreciative of that. I know you haven't seen the policy, so I'm going to talk in as much of the information that we have. If we were to pass a mandate that restricted that all students and staff would wear a mask on a bus, and that a mask would be required when social distancing is not available, is that consistent with what you think is the best practices of what the CDC and the Department of Health is suggesting and recommending?
Well, not only would I say that the Surgeon General just reissued his health advisory yesterday, the 20th, I'm sorry, it came out the 20th. And clearly in that advisory, he again has reiterated the importance of wearing masks by the public who cannot social distance. And also in that advisory, he laid out when exceptions to mask wearing should be used. So I know I have furnished a copy to Sam and her staff, so they have that. Again, I think I received that yesterday, but it was signed on the 20th. And so we will work with you and make sure that those are part of your policies and help you guide with that. But again, mask wearing right now is probably our #1 defense that we have for this virus at this time.
Thank you, that's what I have.
Any other questions for Mr. Rubio?
I just want to mention, Mr. Rubio also serves on different committees within the county to bring health information and mental health information, so he's a very busy man.
And I have 5 public green cards.
I had a question.
Yeah, so I don't want you to leave after you're done with us. We might have some citizens that might need your answer to.
Yes, Mr.
So one of the things I think would be good too is for us to talk a little bit about, taking off and putting on the mask. There are people that feel like the mask should be mandatory from the time a child arrives at school to the time they leave. And obviously, with what the superintendent's proposing, what we've talked about is that they would be able to take their mask off. And, you know, I've had several people talk to me about how dangerous that can be with, you know, setting it down on the floor or on the desk or, you know. So I think it would be good for the education piece too. I mean, hand washing, all these things are still gonna be a huge part of this, and, you know, we'll have to, as parents, make sure our children understand, you know, the importance of not touching their face and mouth, and, you know, making sure their masks are somewhat sanitary where they put them. But, you know, what would be your recommendations on that?
Well, you know, my first recommendation would be to have hand sanitizer in the classrooms, where if your classrooms don't have a sink, I know that probably in our younger education, in our K and 2, I think, probably have some sinks in those classrooms, but in those that don't, I would definitely have hand sanitizer. So if I were to remove my mask, I could hand sanitize, you know, and then when I put my mask on and go to the next one. I think those would probably be some recommendations that we would look at. And that's just right off the top of my head. I mean, we'll look at the policy when it comes out. I will have myself, and trust me, my nursing director, Janora Wade, will review it and try to give you some recommendations with your staff and see what we think that you can do to help strengthen your policy. But again, I think the meat and the potatoes of the policy is the wearing of the mask. And then these things are just some peripherals that we can work with you to strengthen your policy.
Thank you.
My daughter's got a whole supply of masks. Doesn't have shoes in her closet, but she's got a lot of them. And she just found on Amazon a lanyard that you can put your mask on when you take it off. So.
You know, another thing is a plastic bag that you can, you know, Ziploc bag. That's what my wife and I use when we go out, and we have our masks if we go out to dinner. Because as the lawyer said, we do the same thing. We wear our masks till we go to our table. At our table, we remove our mask. When we leave, we put our mask back on. So there's a lot of things we can help you with. And I'm sure there'll be more guidance coming out as we get into school, and these policies are used around the nation now. And we'll find some good practices that we will definitely plagiarize, if I can use that word here in school. Or we will copy, let me use that word, okay? Exactly, I mean, we don't want to reinvent the wheel, right? If somebody has come up with a better plan, then we definitely want to incorporate that and use that.
Anything else?
I just think that we just could get a rundown on, and it's not for Mr. Rubio, I mean, I'm fine with it, but maybe from the superintendent or from the executive team on what masks, again, that we have ordered, that we have available, so that if we were to agree to this today, that we just have that covered and that question's answered.
Also, I'd like to see what they see our high school and middle school children doing at lunch with their masks.
Obviously, that is something that we'll take a look at and see what we can find for you, and what we think would be, again, the best practices that we can recommend for you. And the other side, I think I mentioned earlier, is the other side that we look at for recommendations to the American Academy of Pediatrics, who has come out with a lot of recommendations for return to school. We will, again, work with them. They're a great organization who is always out to the best interest of our children. And so we will look and see what we can find.
Thank you.
And Mr. Mellon, are those the same white masks that they gave us at the last meeting?
Yeah, so every employee will get a 5-pack of these masks, and then we've got more of these on order. In addition to this, I think the latest count this morning was we have about 750,000 masks in the warehouse. Children masks, adult masks. We have about 400 face shields. We're ordering more face shields. Ms. Himmel was in communication with the EOC this morning. Captain DeCarlo told her that he had access to some face shields he was going to get to her as well. So we have that equipment there.
Excellent. That was what I was looking for. And that would equal about how much, as far as if we had to actually use one a day?
We'd be through the first 9 weeks without any trouble. And again, we'll just keep ordering as we need to. We don't want to stockpile too many, but at the same time, we want to make sure we have them on hand. So I don't foresee that as an issue at this time, the supply.
While we're on this clean the room issue, I've had a couple of teachers say they understand the hand sanitizer, but they also wanted to know if they were going to have some type of wipes where they, after a kid left the classroom, if they could wipe a working surface or a doorknob in the classroom. Are we gonna have that for the teachers?
I will tell you right now, the wipes, the disposable wipes are very difficult to get.
Yeah.
They're still difficult to get. That's not to say though that we won't have microcloth and disinfectant available. That we can get, but having the disposable cloth or the disposable throwaway rags has been very difficult to get.
Okay. All right. That it? Your time for comments or? Okay, all right. We have several. I don't know whether I have them in the order that you turned them in, so you're just gonna have to bear with me. Kenneth Wells? Kenneth Wells?
Kenneth Wells? Kenneth Wells. He's coming this time. Go to the podium there for a second.
Hello.
Hi. Hi.
I'm an adult student at Withlacoochee Technical College. Last month, my classmates and I were allowed back on campus on a limited basis on condition that we wear a face mask. So I have personal experience wearing face masks inside of the classroom. And speaking for myself, I found them to be a nuisance. They made it difficult to breathe. They fogged up my glasses. They muffled the sound of my instructor's voice, making it difficult to understand what he was saying. And they gradually grew uncomfortable as the day went on. These things collectively have impeded my ability to learn, which is why I'm asking the school board to strongly consider giving students the option to not wear a mask when reconvening in August. Next semester, I will have to pay over $2,500 in tuition and fees, and I ask that in return that the time I spend inside the classroom does not affect the quality of my education due to distractions involving wearing masks. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Tabitha Wells? Tabitha Wells?
Hello. We're on a delay out there, so I don't know where I'm at, but my name is Tabitha Wells, and I had come here with full intentions of sharing my opinion with you after I saw what the meeting was about last night, but I have had some great opportunity today to hear Ms. Himmel this morning and some of the discussions this afternoon, and I would really like to commend this board and Ms. Himmel as the superintendent of Citrus County School Board, because I feel like we're all in a difficult place, and I feel like there's gonna be some animosity, some frustration, no matter which way we go, but, and I heard a little bit about what the gentleman before me said, where, you know, it makes learning difficult and things like that, and I feel like no matter what my opinion is or what your opinion is, what Ms. Himmel has proposed is an amazing hybrid of how we can accomplish what we need to accomplish. When you cannot social distance, you should wear a mask out of respect for other people, and when you can be in the classroom in your own space, you should have the ability to have the freedom to learn the way that you want to. So I just wanted to say that again, I thank all of you for everything you're doing, the questions you're asking. I appreciate where you're coming from with the discipline perspective, because if you have to make one do it, you need to be able to make all of them do it. I have 3 children, so I understand that you have to be fair and equitable, and you have to have these things in place. And it's really good to see a board that has asked very different questions, but they're all very important, and it's really forced you all to think about all the different perspectives. So again, I wanted to take my time, not to complain or to give my opinion, which I think is important, but neither here nor there, to commend you all, because I think you're doing a great job.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Patty Goodyear? That's the last name, right? Gordon? Okay. anybody's handwriting, because mine's terrible.
Hi, Patty Gardner. I'm a concerned parent, and I see a lot of this social distancing, mask wearing stuff going on, and I don't understand where the science is coming from. I mean, I know we hear a lot of our elected officials, health experts telling us that social distancing is important and mask wearing is important, but I don't hear the science behind it. Like, what difference does it make? Where I stand in relation to someone. If a germ is in the air that's going to kill me, what difference does it make where I stand in relation to someone? Or if I have a mask on. The mask, if you talk to a PPE expert, which no one has ever heard from a PPE expert, they don't talk to them, because when you talk to the PPE experts, they will tell you that these molecules of these germs, this virus, is so small that the cloth that you're wearing on your face does not do a thing to protect you. It's the touching. And the kids always get colds and flus when they go back to school. They always. So are we going to be panicking every time a child gets a cold or a flu? Can we just look at the reality that the kids are not affected en masse? I don't understand. Why are we going to create this environment of our children needing to walk around school like zombies? Do we have to make the children afraid of breathing? That's what we're doing. We're making our children afraid of breathing air. We are creating a world where they are just a lump of germs. And they are not a lump of germs. They are whole people. There are other health ailments going on. They all have health ailments going on. And I just want to cry for what I see. You can't even go shopping now without wearing a mask. And I care about my children. Please do not tell me that I do not care about my children, because my children are my life. I think about them constantly. I'm thinking about what my daughter is doing right now, because I can't be home with her. I'm asking you to please, I know that this is a consensus. I know that there is a movement to get us all to conform to this mask-wearing, social distancing, but please, somebody please take a stand against it and say, our kids are more than wads of germs. They are not just germs. They are people. They are whole people. And I want to cry. Well, I want my daughter to go back to school so bad. I know I'm probably going over 3 minutes. I want her to go back to school so bad. She loves school. She didn't learn a thing from that virtual learning. And by the way, public education is being in with the public. It is not being home, being taught on a computer by a teacher. How can you learn physical education from a computer? You have to be out. You have to be competing with people. You can't. This is not realistic. Please, I'm begging you. I don't know what else to say, but please, let's think about this scientifically. There's no science. It's all the government is telling us that we have to do it. But this is not an elected government. It is a government that makes us, it's controlling us by condemning us and accusing us and making us afraid that we're going to be held accountable for something that, well, there's no way they can prove that somebody got COVID-19 from going to school. My daughter has been at camp. She's been at camp and she's been with kids. And I'm not afraid, not one little bit that she had the time of her life. And I'm not afraid, not one little bit that she's sick. Not one little bit. And I'm asking you to just stop living in this fear that our kids are going to get sick, because they're not. They're going to be okay. They're all going to be okay. Please. Please.
Well, we do have,
I can hear you.
yeah, we do have the director of the health department here, and our next green card is Dr. Patel. Raylene Patel, Dr. Patel. And maybe this will give you, if you stay just a little while, maybe we can answer and have Dr. or Mr. Rubio come. Okay.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for this opportunity to address you. I would like to, but the previous person was not wearing a mask, and I really don't want to touch the podium. I'll be very honest about it. So I am here as a parent of 2 kids who attend school here, as well as a physician. I want to thank you all for all your efforts in doing the right thing. I want to stand here as a parent and a physician to say that masks and hand hygiene and social distancing really does make a difference. We do have physicians and nurses working every day with these very sick patients, and they all are doing the right thing, and they are not falling sick. So I just want to put that out there as a reminder. I would also, as a parent who has chosen to send their kids back to the brick and mortar school, like to know if there is a plan to share with the parents in addition to masking, hand hygiene, and what would be the cleaning protocol for between classes. And I know everybody's working very hard. Also, a suggestion, because some school districts have tried it, rather than moving the kids from room to room, if the kids stay put and the teachers move from classroom to classroom. So thank you all for your time. Just wanted to put it out there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Terry Flattery? Thank you.
Terry Flaherty, elementary PE teacher, Chairman of primary school. I'm asking the board to support Mrs. Himmel's position on the masks. I think for the safety of the staff, for the children, and for the extended families that those children are going to go home to. As a teacher, I think it's important to keep the mandate, because if it was a choice, the masks become a toy. They become a plaything. And as a teacher, it's much easier to say, it's a rule, put that mask back on. It's an easier way to police it. I also like the fact that if it's a mandate, that anyone coming into the school doesn't have a choice. That everyone coming into the school must have a mask on. If they don't have a mask, they don't come in. So I'm asking the board to please support Mrs. Himmel's mandate. As a concerned citizen and as a teacher, I think it's the best thing we can do for our kids, our staff, and our families. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't have any more green cards. Are there any other comments? Any other comments?
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion then. That
We have one more person who wants to speak, Mr. Dodd.
Hello, my name's Tyler. I'm a parent. Well, a couple of things that were touched on is the hand sanitizing. Like, my biggest concern is preventing this from becoming an issue. Luckily, we live in a great county where, you know, residents here still care about each other. But at the school, my daughter wasn't allowed to bring hand sanitizer. So is that going to be addressed, and we can put that on the website when it is addressed? And if we can donate hand sanitizers to the school. Also, there hasn't really been talked about was volunteers. If there's any way to get training to some volunteers for sanitizing the school after school, and give, you know, proper PPE to get some people in there to keep them in the schools clean. Because that's my biggest fear is my daughter and my wife are both worried about going back to school, following the rules, doing the social distancing, everything's going good, and then they go, well guys, school's not going to be open today because we had a flare up and 4 kids got sick, so we're just going to close everything. And so I thought about this for the last couple of days is, let's prevent that, and the best thing we do is be proactive about it. I'm not really want to be involved in the argument about masks. I just want to be involved with what can parents do to help the situation. Because we have, like, we're lucky. We got parents here that are going to go, what can we do to help? What can we do to donate? What can we do to give? And that's one thing I would like to be addressed is that, you know, people that want to learn the proper procedure about sanitizing and disinfecting can come volunteer some time and make sure these schools stay clean so our kids stay safe. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we usually don't comment on citizens' comments, but at the last meeting,
Hand sanitizer.
We did pass that, we did, at the last meeting, we said the kids would carry their own hand sanitizer.
Okay,
Yeah.
and then the teachers will take it and distribute
No,
it, or?
no.
The child can keep
The
it.
child can keep it,
Okay.
yeah. But we'll have sanitizer in the room, but they can carry their own. That previously, the code of conduct said they couldn't carry it.
Yeah, that's what my understanding.
We changed that.
So
Okay.
for now, yeah. And then Tito had some information too about closing the schools, and that was a big thing that we brought up at the last school board meeting. And maybe I should let Mr. Rubio do it, but basically, if we have a case, he will be able to tell us a classroom or a location at the school plan where the incident occurred. We have to sanitize that area or areas wherever it occurred. And he said we should be back up and at 'em in not less than 48 hours.
That's my concern, is just the
Yeah.
interruption.
So it will not, we can move students into
shouldn't interrupt.
another area and sanitize that area. So that was a very good relief to us when Mr. Rubio said that last time.
The volunteer parents is a really big untapped resource.
I know, but we've got to be
Think
real
about it,
careful.
just think
Now, wear a
about it.
mask if you come in.
Just think about it, I mean, training on volunteering to clean those buses
Is
and.
Mr. Bishop still here?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Can you answer a little bit about if people want to volunteer to help us clean?
That's a double-edged sword,
Yeah.
We're gonna try our best.
Proper training to clean.
We've had a lot of conversation about that. We're trying to minimize the number of people coming into the building, because the more people come in, the less we know where they've been. If we have volunteers traveling across the country, going to the epicenter, and coming back into our buildings, are we being productive, or is that counterintuitive to what we're trying to do? So, right now, we're looking to limit volunteers coming to the school.
So it's just gonna be complete limit of people at the school.
In the plan we'll share with the board next week, volunteers will be addressed, and in that plan, it will say that to start a school for the first 9 weeks as minimum, we're going to limit volunteers coming to the school during the school operation hours.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Mr. Rubio, do you have any update comments for us before we?
Well,
Did we answer?
I think the only update I would say is, again, is what I reiterated last time, is that as we move forward with your plans and as we open up our schools, we will take everything that occurs on a case-by-case basis. I mean, these are new waters that we're all stepping into. And we will work together, your county health department and my staff and your staff will work together to ensure the safety of your staff and your students in your schools. So please be assured that you are not in this alone, and nor is anyone else, so we'll work together with it, okay?
Thank you.
Mrs. Himmel, do you have any more comments? Any more comments? No, I'm out of green cards.
There'll be a lot of training for the students, and I will just share this short, sweet, funny story to you all. I had a friend tell me the other day, and I think somebody posted it, that this woman was in the bathroom and these two little girls were in there, and the little girl was washing her hands singing happy birthday, and looked at the little girl and said happy birthday, whatever the little girl's name was, and the woman said to the little girl happy birthday. She said, it's not my birthday. She said, we've just been told we have to wash our hands that long. So kids are listening. But I get the piece about the burden on the teachers, but something Mr. Fleury said, I do think it's easier for our teachers to say this is a rule, this is what we're going to go by. We will treat it, students not wearing them with kid gloves. I don't think I've ever brought anyone to you for expulsion for a dress code violation. So we will make sure that we will work with the kids and the parents and do everything in our power to make sure that we are successful with this. We know it'll be a challenge. We know there will be lots of things when we start school on the 20th that we may not have thought of, but you can rest assured that we'll be on it as soon as we find out. Okay?
Any other business to come before the board?
No, we need to make a motion.
Oh, you want a motion?
Yes. I'll make a motion that we approve the drafting of an emergency policy for mandating masks as we discussed here today.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Dodd, a second by Mr. Kennedy to approve the mandate policy for wearing masks for 90 days. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0.
Thank you.
I would just like to let the board know and the public that the governor, it was just announced, is going to have a special press conference at 5 p.m. today regarding the upcoming school year. So we will want to stay tuned.
And it will change. Flexibility and compassion is we're probably going to have to exceed the 90-day period on the mask mandate, but flexibility and compassion is our word of the year, I believe. So as long as we take care of our classrooms, our teachers, and our students, then we'll all be good. And hopefully, I know I just finished my last school improvement plan this morning with my schools, and I've done 4, and every one of them are really anxious to get back. Absolutely, the scores that we had going in to the closing, I wish we would have had those state tests. Those kids were on fire last year, and they were doing a great job. Our teachers were just, they have to be commended for what they did. And I know sending them home at that time, but the scores that I saw coming out of those little kids were just absolutely, we would have had a lot of these schools, I think. But they were good. So thank you to our classrooms, thank you to our teachers, thank you to our parents that make your decisions quickly, because we're going to bring your kids back to school.
And Madam Chair, next week, we have a scheduled workshop, correct?
Yes.
And what time does that start?
2 o'clock, I think, yeah, 2.
Because remember, we have the budget, 5:30.
Yeah, we have the budget at 5:30.
And I did have someone ask about public comment at the workshop. And I know sometimes, we have the public hearing on the budget, but I told them they could come to the workshop for comment, and I know is there a problem with that?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Flexible.
Okay, very good.
Put it right down.
I thought there wasn't, but I just wanted to make sure.
But I think it's real important that we listen to these people, and I know that's why I asked Mrs. Bryant to read the letter that she had from Beth, because we're not going to please everybody.
You're going to have a special meeting for the policy, and then I think go into the workshop. Traditionally, you don't have comment at workshops because you're not voting on anything. It's just a discussion amongst the board members. The public gets the time to comment on it when you are going to vote. That's how traditionally it is handled, Mr. Dodd.
Yeah, well, and that's why I asked, because I think with the way it is today, and we're going to be talking a lot at the workshop on issues with masks and with.
Public is obviously allowed to come and watch the workshop, but you usually don't take comment, because you can't vote on anything at a workshop anyhow. Y'all are just having a free discussion, so.
Right, but we will have public comment because it's a special meeting, and I'm sure that'll be posted as far as what time that'll be, but I mean, maybe going forward, we could entertain public comment.
Well, let's remember, the workshop is for us to have a conversation with staff. That's the essential part of a workshop. So if you're asking to have a conversation about changing our policy, that needs to be something that we talk about then at a future date.
Yeah, I'm all for public comment, so, if we have to look at that, I would be for that. But right now, it seems like for next week, we'll be in a special meeting, so we can have public comment. I don't want to restrict that opportunity.
I agree with you, Mr. Dodd. We're in different times right now. And so if somebody wants to come and speak, we, just like today, this was a round, and it went very well. So I feel that with all these unknowns, that if somebody wants to come and say something to us, I think we need to listen to them. They can go first and then leave. I don't think it's important. No further business to come before the board? We stand adjourned. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Karen.
Great.
You got your today? Yes, sir. You know how to get home? Yes, sir. Good morning. How are you, sir? Yes, sir.
Good to see you. I didn't even recognize your
Best way.